All right, welcome back to the Exempt List. Today, we are talking all things wildcard weekend, plus a little bit of coaching search that has hit near and dear to my heart as a Falcons fan. We're joined by Nate Tice, host of the Athletic Football Show and a contributor for Yahoo Sports. And we're going to be right back with the start of the show. 1 week of the playoffs in the books, divisional round coming up. We had a super wildcard weekend. I kind of wonder how much longer they're going to keep calling it super wildcard weekend, because now this is just wildcard weekend. Nate, right? We can stop calling it super wildcard weekend.
And everything has to be super. It can just happen. It can just happen. There's one super. It's the Super Bowl. You can't make it. There's no super or anything else. It's just wildcard weekend. Like you said, it's just wildcard weekend.
I was fine with it for the first time. Yeah. The first time we had the set. Right, because it was different. It was different than the years before, but now this is just what we do. Like, this is just wildcard weekend. And to be quite honest with you, it wasn't all that super. There was only one truly competitive game between the Rams and the Lions. I think like that Bills-Steelers game got a little fake competitive in the third quarter or the fourth quarter, but I was talking to Bill Barnwell yesterday. The Steelers, they never ran a play in which they had a chance to tie the game. So
that's all you needed to know.
Right, because when they got it down to 24-17, the Bills immediately scored a touchdown to make it 31-17. So that
marched
game was
on them. I think it was like 7 plays, 70 yards. It was like that was it.
Yeah, they're like, whoa, we've been chewing with our food a little bit too long here. Hold on now. But yeah, so this is Nate Tice. I'm Charles McDonald. We are here, to talk everything wildcard weekend. Excuse me if I sound like I'm discombobulated. I just spent the weekend in minus 30-degree temperatures, and I got food poisoning. Yeah, it was awful. And I got food poisoning on my way back after my original flight got canceled because all of the equipment for the planes kept freezing. That was not a good day for me. But yeah, who are you telling? A traveler's tip. I really don't recommend doing a 3-leg, 9-hour excursion with food poisoning. It was not good. The only thing that was good about it was there was this guy who I was sitting next to on my first flight, who, when we got rebooked, we were actually sitting next to each other on the second flight. And at this point, I had caught food poisoning. So the guy looks up to me and he sits down and he looks over, he's like, "Hey, buddy." He's like, "Oh, you don't look too good." It's I'm not doing too good. In fact, you might not want to buckle that seatbelt because I'm going to have to sprint past you at some point on this plane ride.
Have you pinpointed what caused the food poisoning, or is that just allergy to cold?
I had a gigantic. I thought I was going to have like one last nice barbecue meal at the airport before I left. So I got a barbecue sandwich with some fries, and it tasted delicious. And that was the only meal that I could keep down for a good like 24 hours. Okay. It was not good. So I got home. I got some soup and crackers and Gatorade yesterday, and now I'm easing my way back into feeling normal. We're here.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad I get to get you on the recovery stage at least, as opposed to maybe right in the middle of that food poisoning. I have never had food. I just jinxed the out of myself. But knock on wood, I have never had food poisoning, but I have blame things on food poisoning in my life. So that is also it's what they say in the NHL. There's always because you didn't have to actually like label what the injuries were in hockey. So there's a lot of flu-like symptoms that happened for some hockey players on some road trips. And that is what I usually blame on food poisoning, which is being very hungover. So that is, that's my experience with food poisoning, is using it as an excuse once or twice in my life, in my adult life, for when I don't want to meet up with people.
I will say I think this is my first time as an adult having food poisoning. It did feel like I drank an entire bottle of liquor, and I didn't have a drink except for like Friday when I got into Kansas City. Yeah. So it was bad stuff. Speaking of bad stuff.
Great segue.
Yes. Speaking of food poisoning and throwing up all over yourself and making the people around you a little bit uncomfortable about what's going to happen next. The Eagles scored 9 points in a playoff game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Look, I think we can say this. I'm not surprised that they lost, because the way that they finished the season, and quite frankly, like even the way that they played during the season, Jason Kelce kind of gave voice to it. At some point, I think it was after they beat the Bills. He was like, yo, I don't know how often we can just keep playing from behind and making these comebacks. At some point, paraphrasing here, but at some point it's kind of come back to bite us in the ass. And we saw over the past, 6-7 games of the season, they went 1-6, including losses to the Cardinals and a Giants game where they kind of quit in the first quarter, lost to Drew Lock and the Seahawks on Monday Night Football. It was pretty bad. And it culminated in this loss where they just kind of totally got their butts kicked by a 9-8 Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, which has obviously stirred the fires in Philadelphia and all of the fires of, just Northeastern hot take football culture. Should Nick Sirianni be fired? And that is the question that I want to open up with you on this podcast.
Is
there a case?
There is a case, I think,
yes,
because of his fingerprints on the offense, I would say. And I would say even day one, if you look back from 2 years ago, his first year, when he benched himself as offensive play caller and went to Shane Steichen, and the whole offense and the whole team seemed better for that. And whether it's Sirianni or Brian Johnson calling the plays, but Sirianni, that is part of his, what he's supposed to bring as a head coach. I felt like just the infighting, it seemed like. I think the Eagles are always going to have some messiness to them, just based on their structure of their team, I'd say behind the scenes. But I also just think of where they're at. Success can sometimes make expectations. And last year, when they had the defense just playing that well and getting the ball back, they're playing a weaker schedule. They were just having fun throughout last year. But the NFL is not for long. And it felt to me this entire year, they just never adjusted. They just kept rolling the ball out and just going like, hey, it'll work out. It worked out last year without understanding the magic sauce. And I think that starts at the top. I think in a normal sense, like if I were just looking at a blank slate head coach that's 11-6, they just went to the Super Bowl in the second year, made the playoffs all 3 years, I'd be like, yeah, no way he gets fired. But knowing what has happened in the last 8-ish weeks, knowing what kind of seeing all the infighting and seeing the fighting that's public on the sidelines, yeah, I would not be surprised if he did get fired. Do I think he should? Probably not. But do I think he might be? Probably. I've learned a lot about the NFL, and this is not my expertise isn't being that super insider on this stuff, which is ironic considering my resume.
Yeah.
But I've learned to read the smoke, and the smoke there's been a lot of smoke for a lot of weeks. And that's what makes me think that I shouldn't be surprised if it does happen.
I think our friend Kevin Clark put it perfectly with the tweet last night. The Eagles have fired a lot better coaches than Nick Sirianni. It's kind of what Lurie does. Doug Peterson actually won the Super Bowl and got fired not too long after that. We all know, I think the Andy Reid era might have been a little bit different just because it went on so long there. But still, we know that Andy is one of the best coaches ever. He's going to be a Hall of Famer whenever he decides to turn it in.
He got hired an hour after he got fired.
Right, right.
Fired from Philly, hired by the Chiefs like an hour later.
Right. So we all know Andy's bona fides. For me, the red flag starts to come up when I feel like I'm watching a team and a coach who's known for something, and that something doesn't happen, whether it's offensive or defensive expertise. Like I was kind of wondering during the game, like, Nick, what do you do here? And that's always a bad spot because you lose Steichen to the Colts, which is unavoidable because he had the resume to get hired. You bring in Brian Johnson, and yeah, sure, maybe there's some issues at first with how he's meshing with the players or trying to figure out what works for him and what works for the rest of the roster. But at some point, like when it keeps snowballing to the point where you don't have any answers, you would think that Nick would be able to step in and kind of oversee a transition that gets you back to playing where you were. And I think the fact that they took, even at the point when they were 10-1 and they just beat the Bills, everyone knew that this team was a lot worse than it was the year before. They weren't blowing people out. They were kind of scraping by the skin of their teeth, and they started to lose the other side of this coin toss games towards the end of the season to the point where they just got straight blown out by the Buccaneers in the wild card round yesterday. I kind of wonder if this is where they start to feel like the Hurts contract coming in, and they've put some void years on the back of it that will alleviate some of the cap hits that they have in the coming years. But now, like, we're here to the point where Jason Kelce just retired. this morning. AJ Brown, he missed the game yesterday with an injury. We're starting to feel and get to the point where Jalen Hurts is going to have to be Superman for this team. And I wonder if that's something that he's capable of sometimes.
That's what I'm curious about, too. I think even last year, when he was going through his MVP type run, and it was just like, he wasn't a perfect player. There are no perfect players. Like, everybody has blemishes. Even Aaron Donald's short. Everybody has some blemish to their game. And I had thought that Hurts had improved from when he was as a first-year starter in 2021, or full-time starter, I should say, and then seeing in 2022 and being like, okay, he has improved in some areas, but I thought this year he has fully regressed back to his 2021 self. And where I see a lot of it is understanding the pre-snap process, even some of the stuff when he has to come off his first read, when he feels like he's getting blitzed or heated up, he starts getting not so much happy feet, but it's a different version of happy feet. He bails the pocket, which has worked for Hurts in the past. He's such an exceptional athlete. He can throw well on the move, going to his right, not to his left. Can't throw when he's moving to his left. He's too strong. He's too big and strong. He can't turn or something.
Bodybuilder.
Yeah, I know, man. It's the only quarterback I've ever seen where it's like the two sports he played in high school are football and powerlifting. It's usually football and baseball, or football and basketball. It's all football and powerlifting. With why that matters is he's getting paid to be the guy. And what the guy is, AJ Brown's out, doesn't matter. We still have Jalen Hurts. Our right tackle's out, Lane Johnson, doesn't matter. We still have Jalen Hurts. Jason Kelsey's retiring, doesn't matter. We still have Jalen Hurts. But right now, where I'm at on January 16th, 2024, that scares me because all the stuff, and we saw it against Todd Bowles last night in the Bucs. We saw it 2 years ago in the wildcard game against Todd Bowles in the Bucs. We saw it last week against Wink Martindale and the Giants. Any team that blitzes them and has a plan to heat up this Eagles team and is willing to take a couple knocks to the chin on some deep balls, they're fine with it. And that's because of how Hurts operates against the blitz. And a lot of that is because he becomes simplistic. He wants to work on the outside. He wants to throw go balls. He wants to throw stop routes. And that's a whole chicken and the egg thing. Is that because that's what the offense is being run, or is that them going, that's perfect for what Hurts wants to do? And all that and all the protection stuff and all that matters more now because Kelsey is retiring. They have a succession plan because Cam Jurgens, the guy they drafted, who's been starting at right guard, he's naturally a center. He's supposed to be pretty smart, all this stuff, but he's not Jason Kelsey. It's like, yeah, they're built the same. He's a good athlete. He seems like he's smart, but there's not Jason Kelsey yet. I mean, it's only going to be year 3. It'll be a first year starting at center. Kelsey runs so much of that offense. He handles kills. He handles protections. So now we're seeing Hurts when we're making, the scheme's not perfect. This isn't perfect. It's like, it's going to get harder though. Now it's going to get harder. So he has to start working at that. I'm so curious the next steps of what they think Hurts, what makes Hurts good is being able to work on the outside, being able to do all those types of things. So what is this next version of this offense going to look like? Because I think the current iteration does not, it's hit its max point. You've seen the limitations of it. You've seen all that. And I think it's only going to get harder, which I'm just really curious to see because it's going to be one huge variable has been taken away. And one thing that's been a crutch for Jalen Hurts is now taken away. So now, like you said, it's like, it's really got to get to that contract point where it's like, hey, you're a dude now. So you got to carry all this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's true no matter who their head coach is going to be. And they also have to almost totally rebuild the back seven of their defense. They have no linebackers. The corners, as we saw, have gotten up there in age. Kevin Bayard has been a total non-factor since they traded for him. Quietly a pretty big reclamation project. And now you're hoping that you can kind of keep winning these coin flip games next season as the offensive line gets a little bit worse. You're still figuring out what you want to be on defense.
Lane Johnson maybe only has one more year, It's like,
yeah. It's getting dicey. It's getting dicey. The NFC East as a whole. The NFC East as a whole had a pretty tough weekend. And somebody pointed this out that Brian Dable might be the only coach that returns in the NFC East, which would be pretty funny because Rivera's already out. McCarthy's in the hot seat.
Imagine how this Giants season went. And by the time October hit, it was like that place looked like it was about to get nuked.
Yeah, and we'll get to them at some point later in the offseason. But just switching gears from the Eagles to the Cowboys, and really just this Packers-Cowboys game as a whole, because I don't really have too much to say about Bill Steelers. Come on.
It's just Bill's got injured, but they look Josh Allen's Josh Allen. Steelers are the Steelers. Okay.
The Steelers don't have Josh Allen. Yeah, there you go.
They don't have Josh Allen. No, they don't.
I find it so frustrating sometimes as someone who I still feel comfortable saying that Dak's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Someone that you absolutely would love to have on your roster, that you would have no problem giving over big money contract to.
Yeah.
But sometimes we get these performances at the worst possible times on national TV. I guess everyone's talking about how crap he is, how mid he is. I just want this to stop for his sake and his own sake. I mean, it's not like he hasn't played well in the playoffs before ever. Like he did as a rookie. He did it last year in the Tampa Bay game. I thought that the game he played against San Francisco last year even got oversold in terms of how bad it was. Like that was just a good defense, good quarterback, good defense matchup. You kind of trade blows, and that's the game of football. But we get so quarterback centric and how we feel about these things that it ends up being a referendum on Dak only, and you just kind of lose the fact that the other team had like DeMeco Ryans and a bunch of all pros on defense, which is kind of tough to go up against. So I just want to ask you, do you think that Dak deserves the hate that he gets for some of his player performances, or are we looking too much into like one performance that we see on a national stage?
Do I think he's blameless? No. But I do think that the blame is ridiculous that he gets at times. That he, like, don't get me wrong, the first quarter was not great. He didn't complete, I don't think, a single pass, or he completed one pass. He had no yards. He was taking sacks, all that type of stuff. But again, it's always what happened last week and all that. And just 2 weeks ago, he was the leading, or 3 weeks ago, I should say, he was the leader in the clubhouse for the MVP. And just because we want to say week to week and everything, not for long in the NFL, but it's like you also have to like sometimes just take a deep breath. It's like just that last game might be a bad game, but maybe what if they had 6 good games, and what you got to weigh there. And even yesterday or this weekend, the first quarter was rough, and then he came back the rest of the game and did some nice things and made some nice throws, and it's like kept him in the game. He didn't give up 40-something points, and I think so many times too is just we look at the final result for these quarterbacks. We've joked about now QB wins and everything, but I think once the result of the game comes into place, then we go, oh, well, that was a bad game from them because they lost. Even if the stat line could be exactly the same, the game can play out exactly the same. And then if they come back and win by 1 point, they go, they just kept battling. It's just the narrative of what the result was, as opposed to what exactly happened through the 4 quarters. And why I bring that up is because I think Dak through 60 plays in a 4-quarter stretch is better than 3/4 of the quarterbacks in the NFL at the very least.
At the least, yeah.
Yeah. Do I think he's one of the 4 horsemen? Like I want to call like the top tier guys, Herbert, Josh Allen, Lamar, Mahomes? No. But that second tier? Yes. And that to me is worth a lot of money, because there are 20-ish teams, 20-something teams that would kill for a Dak Prescott, that would move mountains for a Dak Prescott. And if Deshaun Watson could get the trade that he got, or Russell Wilson get the trade that they got when Russell was a few years older than Dak, Deshaun was having his and they got moved for what they got moved for. It's like, and you're going to say Dak shouldn't get paid? Are you guys kidding me? Like, it's like he deserves so much, because I just think down to down, he's one of the better ones. He's one of the smarter ones. Is he maxed out? Because sometimes the creativity stuff isn't what those top tier guys are, but he does so much well, and he wins games for his team. Like the Cowboys have won more games because of Dak than they lost because of him. And I think that's exactly what you pay at the quarterback position. So yeah, do not think the hate is deserved.
Yeah. I look, at the end of the day, I know that there was the pick 6 and there's another drive where they had the interception where Jay Alexander got the pick on a terrible route by Brandon Cooks. Awful route.
Yes.
Awful route.
And ran a route for him too. Jair
Yes. It just got totally bodied at the catch point and couldn't make any progress once he tried to whip back inside. But digress, whatever. The Packers, the Cowboys defense still gave up 41 points, dude. Like, and even if let's say you take away the drive where Jair Alexander set them up with like a 20-yard short field. Okay, you gave up 34 points. Like that's really not all that tenable to go against. Like, to me, it was not just about Dak. Yeah, he kind of put you in a hole early in the game, but at some point you would expect this defense that has all this star power to kind of get moving. they had 0 sacks against the Packers. You know, that was a huge surprise to me because I thought that Micah Parsons was going to have a field day against some of like the younger guys that Green Bay has on the edge. I thought that was going to be a big matchup problem for them, and it just didn't matter in a way that was pretty shocking to me because I was watching this game. I was like, okay, yeah, Dak is kind of imploding a little bit, but at some point, the Cowboys defense, like the talent, is just going to edge out in a way where they can get some stops. No, right. It never
force
happened.
One strip sack, for one tip ball turnover, something. That defense is supposed to be, I know they've had injuries, don't get me wrong, but still should be, you know, at least a top 10-ish, top 12-ish unit, even if it's not the top 3 that we expect, but they're just getting, they couldn't stop the run. They got ran off the table, ran off the field by the Packers, by the baby Packers. It was, they didn't have a chance, it looked like.
Yeah, and this to me is one of the most like damning numbers in terms of, we know Dallas is supposed to be a team that really gets into the backfield with some of the athleticism they have up front. On 32 carries, because Jordan Love had a kneel, they had the Packers ran the ball 32 times essentially. They had 1 tackles for loss, and on the 21 dropbacks that Jordan Love had, he had 0 sacks and was only hit 3 times. So that's where it is right dominance there. And
that's it.
And we've kind of seen this season when the Cowboys get into these games where they can't get the disruption that they're used to, it can go pretty poorly for them. I just didn't expect it to be against the Packers. I thought that this would be the game they would have like if they got to San Francisco, because we've already seen it happen. Yes. But this was a little bit jarring to me.
That's it. I knew it happened to a Shanahan offense. It was just, this was not this one. This. I figured this game would be close. I thought my bet of the weekend was Packers plus 7.5. I thought that was the biggest. I couldn't believe that line because just what I've seen with the Cowboys defense, but I didn't think it was going to be like that game script or an outright win. Just like you're saying. And I mean, they got shredded. It didn't matter what they did. It looked like the inverse of the seeds. Like it looked like the Packers were the 2 seed and the Cowboys were the 7 seed. Like that's how that game kind of felt, like how it played out. I was very surprised. I mean, credit to the Packers too, because like LaFleur just had everything dialed up. But what you're saying too is that Cowboys front, if you're going to be built with a bunch of light bodies, you got to be disruptive because you're not going to sustain. It's not built to sustain. You're not built to be big Patriots style or Saints style or even the Falcons style this year, where you're big bodies. We're not going to get a lot of TFLs. We're not going to get a ton of sacks. We're going to get some scrambles on us. But guess what? We're going to make it a slog for you have to put together 12 plays. The Cowboys are like, hey, guess what? You can hit big shot plays on us and play action, and you can run the ball. So every offense, every team going against that knows what they're doing is just going to go, oh, this is great. And that's the difference is if you're not creating explosive plays, then like we're saying with Sirianni with this defense, it's like, what are you doing here? Like the whole point of how you play a run around, Micah Parsons, line up all across the formation, man coverage heavy is to create explosive plays. That's why you play that way. It's like playing a press basketball system where you're just pressing. Yeah, we're going to get some layups on us, but guess what? We'll get 7 turnovers and before you know it. If you play that style and then we're just going to give up layups, like what's the point? So that's how that Cowboys team felt at the end, and where some of the scheme stuff was simple to let those guys play fast, but then they look slow, small, and very basic, which is not a good place to be living if you're playing defensive football in the NFL, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah, and it doesn't help when the other team's quarterback has just figured out how to become like a top 10 passer over just the course of the season. Yeah. One of my buddies texted me, Jordan Love's so good. One of my buddies texted me during the game. He was like, I didn't realize Jordan Love had gotten this good. I was like, yeah, man, because he kind of wrote them off earlier in the season once they started losing and hadn't really watched them again until this game. He was like, what the hell has happened here? Is this repeatable for them? Like, can they go to San Francisco and do this? I imagine it might be a little bit tougher against that defense.
I think it's a little tougher. I think the offense will find ways. You can run on San Francisco. And that is one thing you can do on them. They are a little boom busty against the run because it's just the guys they have, Bosa, Chase Young, Hargrave. Those guys want to get upfield. Passing will be interesting. I'm very curious because that 49ers back end, pretty good. And they might get a little physical. Travarius Ward might be getting a little physical with some of these young Packer receivers. So I'm curious how that will play. I think the other side of the ball, I'm curious how the Packers will hold up. Joe Barry against a Kyle Shanahan offense does not have me very optimistic. This Packers defense is playing way better, but still, this is kind of like, this is what they're known for. And now the 49ers have a week off. They have game plan. They've played this defense before, or at least know stylings against it. So I think they'll struggle on that unless they can force a turnover, which is anytime you play Purdy in the Shanahan offense, you got to get a turnover or two. But I think that actually the offense will have some moments. So I actually think the offense will hold up okay. So maybe a little bit of a shootout in San Francisco.
I'd be here for it. I hate to say this for Packers fans, but like Jordan Love walking in there and beating this 49ers would be a crazy good story. Like I'm pretty here for that. Yeah,
I am too.
I just can't believe
it's not lucky. It's not lucky how their offense plays and how Love plays. This is very, very real, which is very frustrating, I'm sure, for a lot of NFC North fans right now.
Yeah,
that's what they have to deal with.
The Super Bowl quarterback for the NFC is going to be either Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, or Jordan Love. Like that's hilarious to me. That's hilarious.
And the AFC quarterback is going to be Stroud, Lamar, Josh Allen, or Mahomes.
Yeah,
a little bit of a difference on those two conferences.
Playing the same game. I think we're gonna skip some of these other games. The Rams Lions. I feel like that's been covered ad nauseum in other places. Crazy win for Detroit just to kind of get them monkey off their back. At the same time, I think you also saw why both teams kind of made the trade that they made at the time. Like Stafford was still pretty incredible in that game, gave you a vintage Stafford performance. Goff was able to clean up off of what the Rams defense just kind of left open for him, which felt like everything throughout the course of that game. And now you get to host another playoff game against Tampa Bay, which I think is a little bit more interesting stylistic matchup in terms of just the physicality against the run, and we'll see how that plays out. But outside of the immediate playoff realm, the Falcons, and we've talked about this a good little bit now. The Falcons are making waves with their announcing that they've interviewed Bill Belichick as for potential head coach candidacy. It seems like Arthur Blank and Rich McKay are kind of zeroed in on making this happen, having Bill Belichick be the next coach. I know they've interviewed some other guys, and they've interviewed like Mike McDonald, Avero, Anthony Weaver from the Ravens, but this seems like the direction in which they want to go based on the reporting, based on kind of how quickly it got into the news cycle that the Falcons were interested. And I can't decide if I care about this, and I can't decide if it makes sense for the Falcons. Because my whole thing is like, dude, I was spoiled for 2 decades with Vic, and then you hit Ryan immediately. I need a quarterback. I like the Falcons have sneakily been one of those teams where you've always been able to count on them. Even before Vic, like Chris Chandler wasn't a total scrub, like they
went to the Super Bowl.
Went to the Super Bowl, right? Like with the Dirty Bird Falcons. And now we're just kind of in the muck, in the rudder, trying to figure out what's next. My stance on Belichick is I don't care particularly. I don't know if it makes sense unless you can get a quarterback. Because if you're a team, or not a team, but if you're the Falcons and you kind of start to get this offseason with Belichick and you don't really have a plan at quarterback, what's the point? Because this is not something that he's going to be here for. He's old.
We just saw him try to develop another one. When we saw how that all went with Mac Jones. I know that's right away. It was like, oh, Falcons are after Belichick and Harbaugh. I was like, okay. And it seems to me a lot of it is the narrative of hiring Belichick going, we're bringing in an old coach to discipline our team. We were undisciplined. You had a young team. Like that. It seems we've talked about this off air and probably still a little bit on air, but it's just like the expectations for the Falcons were a little crazy this year for a team that was projected to win 8 games going into this year. And guess how many games they won? 8 games. They won exactly how much they were expected to win by the win totals in Vegas. And it seemed like
we know they won 7 games.
7 games. Oh, that's right. They won 7 and 10. That's right.
10 years. Yeah.
I just assumed they won 8 games because it was like, yeah, they had all those easy ones. But yes, they won 7 games. But it's the Ritter, and I think like you're saying, we always had Ryan, we always had Vic, and then all of a sudden going to this quarterback purgatory, it seemed to rattle the whole franchise. Because that was like what he even like Blank in his press conference. He was like, well, we got to figure out the quarterback position, because basically he was saying we're not doing that again. And it's just, I want to just like ask, is like, did you guys understand your timeline? Like, you guys are acting like you guys are contending this year. And I thought this was going to be a nice, happy, fun year for this franchise. Oh, okay. We're just, kind of like the Lions maybe last year, where they're frisky, maybe sneak into the playoffs, but it was the complete opposite. They acted like they're trying to win 12 games. They act like they're the Eagles. And that's, to me, the continuation with it, with Blank and McKay being, seems like the decision makers here, and kind of, whatever the GM is kind of just hanging.
Yeah, whatever. I don't know how much power Terry has.
What has he done wrong?
I don't know. He kind of nails free agency totally, like all the way through for them.
Yeah, Jesse Bates really disappointed you, huh?
Anyamata,
Charles really disappointed. Calais Campbell really disappointed, huh? Like, I know, it's like I'm just, the draft picks are, I don't know. It's very weird to me, and why I'm saying all that is McKay is, I think his thinking is a lot from the early 2000s when he was still a GM in the NFL. And Arthur Blank, I think, is buying into that narrative of going like, hey, we're bringing a discipline. We're bringing the old coach. You can't rag on us for hiring Belichick. Everything that Arthur Smith went through this entire year, I think they were just like, well, now we got Belichick. No one's going to say stuff at press conferences to Bill Belichick. So I think truly that's why I think the reasoning is behind all of this. It's just like they're trying to protect themselves from getting made fun of. I really think that's what they got to at this point in their kind of life cycle. But it's interesting.
That's crazy.
Right? I have no idea what to kind of think of this, because it's just so out of whack. I felt like this was such a young team that they could bring in another kind of young coach, offensive or defensive, and just kind of keep that going. But it seems to me they're like, enough of that. It's like, they're like, we don't want to rebuild. And it's like, all right, well, got to understand what you are as a franchise. So
yeah,
long story short, too long didn't read is I'm confused as you are, Charles, and I'm trying to make sense of it as well.
Like, dude, if I'm Bill, I'm hoping to God that Cowboys job opens up, and I'm sprinting over there.
Sprinting. Yes.
If Bill can just add some guys with some size to them on defense, and you stop playing the safeties at linebacker,
and you got a smart quarterback to handle all the game management stuff on offense, you are cooking. I know. Good. That's the one. That fit makes sense to me more than the Falcons are in the middle of, like, they're at the tail end of a rebuild. They have to drop in that quarterback. The Cowboys are ready made. So it's like, that's where you want to drop a Belichick in, a 70-something-year-old coach that doesn't want to
last thing,
grow a quarterback.
I would imagine that Belichick comes with the idea that you're going to go out and get a veteran quarterback, which is who? Like, is it going to be Kirk?
Which was Arthur Smith's plan probably anyways. Is
it Kirk? Because Kirk seems like, if I was the Vikings, that's what I'd be trying to do, just get Kirk back, because where they finish the season.
This is the funny thing to me too, is like, because Kirk, to me originally before he got hurt, was like, oh, that's a great option for the Falcons. But also every team that wants a quarterback keeps going, Kirk. And you knew his agent is hearing all that? Is Kirk Cousins' agent. And I heard yesterday on another show I'm on, they're like, if you can get Kirk for a 2-year, $60 million deal, I'm like, well, total? No, he might get $60 million a year. But like, we all understand how markets work. That's why I keep trying to pound through people. It's like, there's property value, and then there's market value. Yes. And Kirk Cousins' market value is going to be through the roof. So I think some people have to adjust some of their thinking right now with what his free agency is going to be.
Because the thing that people don't ever think about is quarterbacks of even Kirk Cousins' caliber almost never hit the open market. And we saw like when Deshaun Watson was going through his ordeal and getting to change teams. Oh, if a quarterback actually hit the open market, this is what teams will be paying: a $230 million fully guaranteed contract instead of just negotiating against themselves from the guy that doesn't really have the power to get through the open market. So we'll see what happens with Kirk Cousins. I don't really understand what the Falcons are doing. That's not necessarily new. I just think that they should give Terry Fontenot a little bit more free rein, because it's not really like he's been bad since he got there. I think the 2021 draft was kind of a disaster outside of Kyle Pitts, maybe Drew Dahlman. But outside of that, like the past 2 drafts, you've gotten some real contributors that can stick around for, the foreseeable future. We'll see what happens there. The last segment we're going to get to today. There's 8 teams left in the playoffs. Baltimore, Buffalo, Kansas City, Houston on the AFC side, San Francisco, Detroit, Green Bay, Tampa Bay on the NFC side. We're going to look at the top 4 offenses, top 4 defenses remaining in the NFL playoffs. But I kind of want to start with defense because I think we're going to get a good matchup this weekend, especially with the Ravens defense taking on the Texans offense in divisional round game. Big test for CJ Stroud. Last week was also a big test for him against the Browns defense, and he absolutely torched that defense. No problem. Yeah. He and Bobby Slowick, they had no problems getting up and down the field against Jim Schwartz and the Browns, who statistically were the best defense in the league this year. But I think when you get into the playoffs, I would be a little bit more concerned about playing Mike McDonald's defense because they just seem to throw more things at you. So I think that this is definitely one of the best defenses left in the playoffs. And I would imagine that this is largely the reason why the Ravens are favored by 9 points or were favored by 9 points going into this weekend. What do you think about this matchup between, CJ Stroud and the Ravens defense, or really what separates this from, the Browns defense last weekend?
With Jim Schwartz, he's running the same coverages he ran 10 years ago. It's a lot of single high, meaning cover 3, man, and then the 2 invert as a change up and some blitz looks. And then the Ravens defense is, and the term I've used is kaleidoscopic, and that they run every coverage you can think of. And that's what makes it hard on quarterbacks and offensive lines, really. If you're passing the ball, is it a blitz? Is it a simulated pressure? Is it a creeper? Is it just drop 8? Is it zone? Is it man? They run everything and they hide everything to make everything disguisey. They've had a bye week, and they even admitted, I think Harbaugh said in a press conference, that they were already prepping for the Texans because they didn't think the Steelers were going to beat the Bills and change everything up and change up the seating. So they have had some time, and they played earlier this year. So why I'm saying all that is, like, even in the regular season, McDonald has shown a great, propensity to have these game plans every week, changing what he's going to do against certain offenses. Now he's had time to prep, and they played before. So I think they're going to have some really good answers. The Texans aren't very good running the ball. They will run the ball, which I'm always going to be a fan of, because that's part of the system. That's part of the formula. A lot of Stroud's big plays are off play action. But again, the Ravens, the one way you can get after this defense is pound the rock on them. But if you can't really do that, okay, now we're going to have to chuck it. We're going to get a lot of 3rd and longs. So I think that kind of game script plays into the Ravens' hands, even though I think this Texans offense and Stroud are fantastic. I just think that the Ravens have a lot of answers for what the Texans do want to do.
Yeah, the Ravens defense is interesting because they have, I look at this, to me, they have the personnel to be a top tier run defense, like super stifling. And they go through phases where it's really tough to run the ball in them, but they can also get gashed at the same time.
It's all the moving. It's because they're doing all that crazy moving stuff, so the guys get caught, and that's why sometimes you're going to get gashed by it, but it's like just keep pounding it on them, because once in a while you'll pop it.
And so sometimes Michael Pierce, like I think he's a pretty good run defender, but sometimes I think with all the movement stuff, he's a little hair slow, and that can get them stuck into some bad situations.
I gotta go all the way over there.
Don't they know I'm 360, bro?
Yeah, just let me plug up the center. Just let me 2-gap the center. Just don't have to do anything.
Michael Pierce would have fit in perfectly on like the 06 Ravens, Let him rotate in with Kelly Gregg, Nick Sonata, and just absolutely beat the crap out of some center in front of him. But yeah, I'm really interested to see how the Ravens are able to kind of handle the explosives from the Texans, because to me that's something they've gotten a lot better on, especially from the start of the Mike McDonald era to now, just in terms of not getting super gashed by some of these big plays down the field. And I think we were talking about it off air in our little group chat. Like, if there's like, once you get into the playoffs, it kind of helps you to be one of these teams that's going to throw a lot of change ups out there instead of being a little bit more static, like maybe the Browns defense is. So it gives them a chance. I'm pretty pumped to see this game, and obviously we'll get Lamar on the other end. But
you'll be there live, right?
Yeah, I'll be there live. I'll be there on Saturday.
Nice. That'll be fun.
Hopefully I don't get food poisoning this time and get stuck in.
And hopefully it's not negative 30.
Yeah. I'll take 0 degrees, just not negative 30. So the Ravens, definitely one of the top 4 defenses left in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Chiefs
number 2. Yeah. I just wrote that down. I would say they're number 2.
Okay.
And
fresh off of beating the brakes off of Tua and the Dolphins offense in frigid temperatures. And look, I know that I don't really know how much to blame on the temperature, because it seemed like Pat Mahomes was playing just fine. He seemed okay.
They dropped back 40-something times.
Yeah, and his day could have been bigger if Mecole Hardman just kept running on a post route or go route, earlier in that game. So the Chiefs defense, I feel like they're like kind of like the Ravens defense. They're just perfectly set up to play postseason football. I know there's been a lot of talk about like the double rotation that went down where Tua threw the interception. Even the rotation didn't really affect the play all that much.
I want to rant on that on our pod. Oh man,
yeah. Tua just kind of
X's on the chalkboard. It's the same X's.
Same X's.
It doesn't matter what the jersey number is. That was, oh my God, moths to a flame. Everybody on that play, and I want to rant about that on our pod, because I was actually disappointed in Tua on it, because he actually did get fooled on it. And I was like, it was a very simple 2 high. It's a 2-man look, but it was and he went to the side to Tyreek that's double covered, and as opposed to reading the field out, which is that's the side he's supposed to go on. So it did get him. So maybe people are saying like, oh, maybe there is some credit to it, but that one cracked me up, because it's like, doesn't matter where those guys are moving. It's just where they end up. Just look at the X's and where they end up.
Even if he did get fooled, like the throw was still there to be made. Like, it was right there. He just airmailed it.
It's because it was short circuiting. It was watching that one back was interesting, because he comes off Tyreek, and you could tell he's like, oh, I shouldn't have gone there. And he goes to the field, and he goes to that first read to the field, and he's like, oh boy. And then he's like, oh, there's a dig.
He's open.
Nope. Sailed it.
Absolutely sailed it. But I say that to say, I guess to a degree, it's kind of the stuff that makes Spags difficult at times to play in the playoffs, because, dude, even I remember after the game, I asked Tua and Mike McDaniel about like some of their struggles against the blitzes, and it was like partly a Dolphins problem, partly a Chiefs problem, where Spags is great and he's going to come and blitz your ass off, and especially with some of the issues that the Dolphins have had picking up some of these guys, it can be a tough out for them. But at the same time, like, I thought it was interesting that Mike and Tua were like, yeah, we've had some communication problems up front, and Tua kind of made it seem like they have a little bit too much going on pre-snap at times, where they're getting the ball, because he was like, yeah, so I'm getting out there and we have 2 motions and there's 9 seconds left on the clock. After the first one, we get to the second one, there's 5 seconds left, and now we can't change anything, and here comes the blitz, and it's game over.
Tua's pretty good at throwing some shade in these press conferences. He's pretty good at the passive aggressive comments that people don't pick up on. I've noticed that. I picked up some comments in there.
Yeah, I was like, that was because it comes across as a good explanation too.
It does.
Yes,
it does. But that's true. That is the downside of motion and that's why the Shanahan guys, they don't like their quarterback and center doing all the Peyton Manning or Dak Prescott, Drew Brees. Hey, that's the mic, and we're changing the protection. They want to just line up, do all their motions, and they say they have the built-in hots, which is, okay, if we do get pressure, the protection's not right, we're going to throw that ball right away to that route. But when you play a guy like Spags, who has gone against Shanahan offenses for decades now, he knows those rules. So he'll just wait for you to do all the motions, use the close splits. He'll blitz a corner. He kind of uses their own strengths against them, very judo style, use their own kind of weight against them. But Spags is the best, I would say, defensive game planner as far as week to week. I talked about game planning stuff, but we say that when he's been with the Chiefs, when he's had kind of mediocre talent, now he actually has like talent everywhere, and he's like having a field day. And now he's entering the playoffs, which is like Spag season. Like January is Spagnola season. So like this, I'm sure he can't wait to kind of. I'm very curious what he throws at Josh Allen and the Bills, because I'm sure he's going to try his best to just make it as chaotic as possible.
Yeah. Number 3, the 49ers, I would say, just based off like overall talent level. Like you said before, this team can be run on. that may be a small shift from years past, but like a defense with Fred Warner and Nick Bosa and all those guys, it's kind of hard to not have them on this list.
Chase Young, Eric Armstead, Javarius Ward, Dre Greenlaw, just guy after guy after guy. Lenore's like an awesome nickel. It's like, yeah, they have so many dudes.
Pretty good.
Yeah,
that was a nice little bounce back run for Steve Wilkes to walk into. You
think? Yeah, that was nice. That's some good mouthwash. That's yeah. I know the only thing he changed too is like, I'm going to run a little bit more man coverage. And it was like, that's it. It's like the same defense. It's hilarious. Like from last year, it's like, yeah, if it's not broke, don't fix it too much.
Yeah, and this is one of those defenses where it can almost run itself based on like the personnel that they have.
Warner.
I mean, Fred Warner is just incredible. We've talked about him ad nauseum for years now. It doesn't seem like he's slowing down at all. They have the defensive line talent up front. You just hit on some of the secondary talent. This is just one of the more kind of complete units in the league. So definitely in the top 3. And look, if Jordan Love can get past this and put up like 30 points again, we might have to start like, dude, that contract is going up and up and up and up. He's definitely going to be getting like 50 to start off because the last contract he signed, I think he had a 1-year extension for like $25 million. Go ahead, rip that up.
They're locking this down.
Moving on.
I'm telling you, the Packers guys I know that are in personnel there, and even some of the coaches that I've talked to the last 2-ish years, they all kind of are hinting at that this was coming about Love. I can confirm they weren't expecting this like a legit top 8 guy, but they were saying no, he's going to look pretty good this year. They were pretty optimistic about it, but like I said, like this has just been a whole other level. like you said, this is 50 million. This is a very, very pricey quarterback that we're about to see play this weekend.
Not fair. But 30 years of franchise quarterback play.
It's insane.
It's insane. And look, like, dude, if this is what year 1 looks like for Jordan Love, would they have? And I know we're talking about defense, but real quick, like if this is what year 1 looks like when they have basically all first and second year guys at wide receiver, you have 2 young guys at offensive tackle, your quarterback's young, the 2 rookie tight ends, like this is pretty crazy. Where would you go for the 4th defense in terms of this list?
Man, if the Bills didn't get all decimated, I actually kind of like them being kind of game planny. Man, it's kind of the pick what you want. I actually don't even know statistically which team is kind of like the best at this point in time, because like even going through it, like the Texans got a good pass rush. I'll give them that. They're pretty good stopping the run as well. You can gash them on the back end, and they just have troubles with that. So that's what makes me hesitate. That's maybe this all I go. Packers you can run on. You can run on. The back end has played well against the pass, but to me it's still kind of a bottom half unit, even if they have played better. Might be the Bucs.
I think I might go Tampa.
The young guys have played a lot better, and it's Bulls, and like they've really kind of figured out this identity of this year. And the Lions have played a little bit better too in the last few weeks, especially against the run. So I do want to give them a shout out. But I guess it would be the Bucs. I think would be my answer going into this exercise.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how like the Lions offense fares against the Bucs defense, because the last time they played, the Bucs held them to less than 2 yards per carry. And, to be fair, like Jared Goff, like he still performed pretty well outside of that. He still had a good game, but still, that's what the Lions want to be. They want to be a team that can run the ball. They want to be a team that can absolutely just blow you off the ball. Because, dude, some of those plays that they had against the Rams this weekend, dude, guys were 5 yards just in the linebackers' laps as soon as the play started. And
double teams were insane.
Yeah. I guess if there's any team that can kind of hold up against that level of physicality that's left in the playoff, it's probably Tampa Bay, because they just beat the brakes off of Philly's, whatever Philly had going on. And Bulls, for all, maybe he's not like the perfect head coach, but still as like a defensive play caller, he's still got some juice. And he's been doing that for a long time now.
Yep. He there's a reason, like even Rodgers, that's the thing about Aaron Rodgers, is like you get him to actually talk about football stuff. It's great. Like he actually is insightful and stuff, but he talked about it. He said Bulls is the guy that gives him a lot of issues. I think Tom Brady has said the same thing. I would agree with it. I've gone against Bulls defenses when he was with the Jets. It's just a pain. It's just like, because you have to expect a lot of funky looks. You have to expect the safeties to be everywhere. So that's the thing, is he's a knuckleball pitcher. It's like, you know, you play with a lot of guys that can throw 102, 98, 102, and all of a sudden you're going against Tim Wakefield. And you're like, gosh, okay. All right, here comes, there's another junk one. Okay, it's like, it just changes you for that 1 week, and now we're in the playoffs again. Does help some offenses because they get more time to prep, but so does Bulls. And so that'll be kind of an interesting thing. I looked it up. So the Bucs are 14th in weighted DVOA, meaning the last 6 weeks. So top half, then that's how they've looked. They've looked like a top half unit. So I think my number 4 answer, I'm going to stick with the Bucs.
Yeah, that works. That works for me too. Let's get through the offenses real quick before we get out of here. To me, number 1, San Francisco still, even with
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. They have the Avengers, dude.
That's it.
You know, and Nick Fury's calling the plays.
I feel like after they lost to the Ravens, everyone just tuned out on the 49ers, and then it's just like, oh yeah, they're insane.
They're still insane.
They can drop 200 rushing or 400 passing in any given game. They can score, or they can have long drives. And they have, like you said, they have the Avengers. So yeah, I think they're number 1 offense.
And let's be real about like that, the Ravens 49ers game. Great game for the Ravens defense. I would be surprised if I see Brock Purdy throw 4 picks anytime soon. And I would say that just about like any quarterback, because it's an outlier performance in a way that's so bad it's hard to repeat. So yeah, as long as they're not turning the ball over at that rate, they should be able to score on just about anyone. To me, that's the clear-cut number 1. This is where it gets tough. Baltimore or Detroit or even Green Bay or Buffalo.
Or even Green Bay. I know.
Or Kansas. I mean, how do we feel about Kansas City? I don't know.
It's almost like offense is important. My initial answer was the Ravens, but I'm actually going to go with the Packers.
Packers. Okay.
I think so, because the run game got there. And so I think, and even if I don't think their drop back is maybe to, oh man, I'm already regretting this answer. Because now I'm actually thinking, I'm like, oh yeah, the quarterbacks, and I love Love, don't get me wrong, but you got to remember how these other guys maybe, oh man, now I'm taking back the Packers.
I'm gonna go with the Ravens here.
You're going with the Ravens? I'll go with the Bills. I'll go with the Bills, actually. Yes. But I actually think that's, oh man, then you got the Lions. Man, this is hard. I think I'll go with the Bills. I think I'll go with the Bills just because Josh Allen and their run game's really good right now. The O-line's playing well. And I think their auxiliary answers they're figuring out the auxiliary answers too.
Yeah, I don't know if the Ravens offense is always as efficient as some of these other units, but the singular force, the gravitational force of Lamar Jackson, it changes everything.
Get it.
You know, like
the
Ravens, I think through a good chunk of the season, they had one of the best rush offenses ever for DVOA. And like, dude, that's Gus Edwards and Keaton Mitchell and Justice Hill. You know, those are nice pieces to have, but best run game ever. Come on, that starts with the quarterback.
Why do we think that is?
Right. Why do we think that is? And it's not like the offensive line is like super overwhelming either. No. The year
hurt.
In 2019, you could say, hell yeah, they were mowing people off the ball. But this year, this is just all like the gravitational force of Lamar. And as long as he's gonna play as well as he has been this year, I feel like he's got to be number 2. Bills. Maybe that's number 3, but even like I kind of want to put like the totality of the Lions over them, and
I do too, and the line and all that. I know, it's like,
and also like, dude, what the hell has happened with this Josh Allen to Stephon Diggs connection? It seems like since Joe Brady took over, they haven't been able to kind of get that thing moving. No. And really, just in general, the drop back passing game hasn't been as explosive.
It's different. Yeah, they tried last game yesterday. They tried to put Diggs at the number 3 spot, all the way inside like normal tight end spot. But they fed the ball a little bit, but it was interesting to me. It was like, cause they're trying to get him away from Joey Porter Jr. And Joey Porter Jr. has been great this year as a rookie for the Steelers, but it's like, you're Stephon Diggs, it's like, this is, yes, it's even if it's a very good corner and you're like going like this, okay, that's still a coin flip, like a 50-50 battle at worst. I don't know. That was interesting to me that they should speak to Porter, that they're giving him that much respect. But also it's like, I don't know. That's interesting to me too. That's like, it hasn't been Diggs. It's nice to see Kincaid in the run game and Khalil Shakir getting some love. But also it's like, yeah, we know where the bread is buttered in this offense. And it's nice that they can have it, but it's weird that they can't just have some games where he's going off. So I kind of agree with you on that end. I just think all the other aspects is doing the lifting for me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All these offenses are good, though.
I know. I think I would do Ravens 3. And man, yeah, between Packers, Lions, and Chiefs, that's tough. And I mean, even Texans. Texans can't run the ball, which is what's dinging me on that. And it's a lot of Stroud just being a god. Yeah, I'm going with Ravens 3 because just everything you say about Lamar.
And then, do we put Kansas? No, I think Detroit's got to go here.
Right?
Yeah.
Just because everything they can do and the line and everything. Johnson. Man, that's tough though. Like I actually would really narrow this down to 4 was harder than I thought it would be.
Right.
I can make a valid argument for all of them. Like that's the point. I
think everyone except for Tampa Bay has an argument to go here, which especially
Tampa's not bad this year on offense. They're actually okay, which is so that's cool.
Canales is getting the head coaching stuff for a reason. Like I said on Barnwell's podcast yesterday, like if you're someone who hasn't kept up with the Bucs yesterday, you saw for real firsthand Canales versus Patricia, big mismatch, especially towards the end of the game when it felt like they just gave up everything underneath. That was real weird.
Cade Otton was torching them.
Yeah.
I like Cade Otton, but I like Cade Otton as like a blocker who catches like 3 or 4 passes like every couple of weeks, not getting fed for a dozen targets.
Shouldn't be, you shouldn't be getting torched by Cade Otton, where every time he catches the ball, especially like later in the game, it felt like no one was in,
on the
within arm's length of him.
Defenders running into each other. It was
really, really bizarre.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess the last thing I have here. What kind of separates what Houston is doing from what Green Bay is doing with Love and Stroud? Like, to you, what is the differences that would maybe have you put Green Bay over Houston in this scenario?
I think the Packers run game since Aaron Jones has gone back has been fantastic. And now that they got both tight ends out there with Kraft and Musgrave, I mean, we saw it against the Cowboys. Like that's now a strength as opposed to a supporting character in their offense. So I think that's what's doing it for me. I think both offenses can get explosive plays by the bunches because they do so much play action stuff and all that. And Stroud and Love are playing as well as anybody. But it's that the tie goes to the run game. And I think the Packers have a very good one while the Texans have kind of a bottom 10 one. But that is kind of what does it for me. And Nico Collins is fantastic. And Dalton Schultz is solid. But, Packers, even if they're young, they got some juice with those receivers. So they got just a little more team speed, even if the Texans, actually, Texans are pretty quick and pretty fast too. But the Packers got some dudes too, as I think just all around.
Yeah, I didn't realize. So, I think the Texans offense can be a little bit more boom or bust sometimes than I had, thought about sometimes, especially like if you go to Ben Baldwin's site, rbsdm.com, they have a pretty big split between like their EPA per play and their success rate. The 15th in EPA per play, 24th in success rate. So, they're kind of living and dying off these chunk plays, but that's a good place to start for a team that was 2-15 last year, 3-14, something like that.
A rookie quarterback, and it's like name a starter outside of Larry Tunsil. It's like that was basically their offense last year. And I no offense, like Nico Collins, all those guys, but Nico Collins was not playing like this, how he's playing this year. So it's a remarkable transition.
Speaking of just like, before we get out of here, how good the offenses are that are left in the postseason. Just to go by success rate for the whole season on rbsdm.com. Number 1, San Francisco. 2, Buffalo. These are the teams that are left in the playoffs. So 1, San Francisco, 2, Buffalo, 4, Baltimore, 7, Detroit, 8, Green Bay, 12, Kansas City. So, these are, this is the cream of the crop here, right?
Yeah.
And then you kind of have Houston and Tampa Bay kind of at the bottom. But even then, we've seen that they can get hot in their own right and get across the finish line. So it's going to be fun, man.
There's one stat I look at going to every playoffs is teams that have a 40% or plus early down success rate and have a 14% or more explosive pass rate. Literally, can you pound the rock and can you get gashes through the air. Just classic offensive formula. But I found that that's what works in the playoffs. And this year, the teams that qualified were the 49ers, Bills, Dolphins, but that was kind of like we didn't really see the real Dolphins by the end of the year. The Rams, the Ravens, and then the Lions and the Packers. And then, like, so the team I'm not mentioning there is probably the Chiefs and the Bucks. The Chiefs are still freaking Patrick Mahomes. And that was because of the run game has just been so poor this year, but it looked a little better last week. But why I'm saying all that is like, these are the real offenses, and that's why they look like this. This is not fluky. They can do a lot of things well, and I think it's awesome. I'd much rather have that after this long slog of a season with a bunch of backup quarterbacks. Let's see some points. God dang it.
Yeah.
That's all I want to see in the playoffs.
Yeah. I just give me Lamar in the AFC title game. That's all I want.
Right.
Because
it's guaranteed to be, it'll be Lamar or Stroud versus Josh Allen or Mahomes in the AFC Championship game. It's like, yes.
Good stuff to me. Nate, before we get out of here, you want to let people know where they can find you, what you're working on, that you're excited to share with people?
First and foremost, well, you can read me on Yahoo Sports. The Overhang comes out every Thursday. This week, potentially writing about Cowboys defense and Eagles offense. So that was kind of fun that we talked about today. Also, the Athletic Football Show with Robert Mays. You hear that several times a week. Playoffs are ripping and roaring. And what else do you hear me on? That's about it. Find me on Twitter, Nate_Tice. Yeah, a lot of words everywhere. I just don't shut up. That's just my life right now. Words.
Yep. Send us a voicemail. You can send us a voicemail at speakpipe.com/0blitz. You can ask a question, hottest take, read them on the show, and we'll listen and reply. We'll be back with another episode of The Exempt List next Tuesday and every Tuesday. I'm Charles McDonald. You can find me on Twitter at Reverts. Like Nate said, you can find him on Twitter at Nate_Tice. Our producer, Stone Rochelle, is on Twitter at SJ Rochelle, and we will see you next week.